are the ley lines of the earth, a mystical travel route across the earth, and we're going to follow the Arcadian ley lines along the pilgrimage sites, the holy sites having to do with the archangel St Michael. We know that it was St Michael that took the torch of light, the holy light, from the hand of the fallen angel Lucifer, and he said, "We stand strong, belief in God." And he, of course, is the top of the archangels, St. Michael. We have reference of him, for one example, from what I remember. I'm not a theologian, but St. Gabriel, the archangel Gabriel, talking to the prophet Daniel, when Daniel was in the exile in Babylon, telling him of the future of Israel, even prophesying about Alexander the Great, and how Michael was at that time in a spiritual battle over the east, and then he would be coming to help the other areas towards the west. Now we have this very strange map going from the southwest to the northeast of England, to through the areas where we have the megalithic sites of the ancient constructions, and also the sites of St. Michael's holy sites, where we have churches or monasteries. Now we know that the ancient wisdom and old tales always hold mysterious lure for common folk. One such myth is the ley lines. I don't know if it's a myth because we have so many megalithic ancient constructions on these positions that it seems that they were intentionally built there in order to somehow attract the earth energy. So these ley lines supposedly cover the entire earth. It's invisible to the human eye, but a special magnetic field or earth energy can be sensed if one walks over it. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. I've had a personal experience in one of these locations. We know that a lot of monasteries and churches have been built over the ancient megalithic sites, for example, in Greece, and they've made churches over the temples, the ancient pagan temples that were built on the ley lines. And I had gone to one of these. I was trying to take pictures and videos with my camera, and my camera would not work. Can you imagine? It would not even turn on. Then when it finally did turn on, I had some images didn't come out, and some others had white blotches on them. That is, of course, not explainable. We also noticed that there were areas in that monastery complex. It was Osios Lucas above Livadia, and that area was on top of, that monastery was built on top of an old ancient temple, and we found a lot of very old springs that had ancient construction, marble construction over them. And of course, they used the stones from the ancient temples, as we saw from the foundations of the church, huge, unliftable blocks. And of course, the other bricks and stones above those were smaller, much smaller in size. So yes, a lot of these sites were built on pagan megalithic sites. So what is a ley line, and what is its significance, and what's the reason for the existence of it? Scientifically speaking, ley lines are like an energy grid system, and they are often straight, moving along all directions, and they connect various places of ancient religious and spiritual significance, often including human-made megastructures. Spiritually speaking, these paths were known to almost all ancient civilizations. For example, to the Germans, they were known as Heilige Linien, to the Irish, fairy paths, to the Chinese, dragon lines, to the Peruvian, spirit lines, and to the Australian Aborigines, song paths. These routes and landscapes are believed to have spiritual significance. In 1929, the term ley lines first held its importance, and if you take a close look at the world map You can see that many important structures are at straight line paths from each other. Not only that the distance between them is so geometrically meaningful. For example, Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids of Egypt, the Great Wall of China, and many people believe that ley lines are grid lines of Earth which hold the energies of the Earth. And there are many theories behind the puzzle of ley lines or the old straight track. And this is what we're going to find out now. Let's remember one of the past videos when I was talking about the lines of Nazca, Peru. We extended one of them. It went all the way around the Earth, halfway around the Earth to the Angkor Wat Temple of Cambodia, which is by size the biggest temple, ancient temple on the Earth. Now, the magnetic field of the Earth, according to the Chinese art of Feng Shui, every building, every stone, every tree, every object should be in a position of harmony with the Earth's magnetic and spiritual energy field, and they believe that the dragon currents or the Earth's magnetic field flowed in the grid of ley lines. And the Earth has its own magnetism, and maybe the ley lines are the imaginary lines along which the magnetism of the Earth flowed, and it's also believed that the dragon currents determine the routes of sun, moon, and planets. And let's remember for example, the ancient temples of Greece and even Israel, the Temple of Solomon in Israel, in Jerusalem, they had outer columns and inner columns. And people believed that they were constructed that way because the columns were a way for the earth energy from the ley lines that they were built on to extend through the columns, so that when people passed through the columns or even touched the columns or leaned through columns, they would get their human magnetism straightened out so that they would be healthier. Okay, so that's why they were built with columns. Again, that's from one of the past videos and articles that were explaining that to us. Now, what about the astronomical alignments of these locations? Astronomical alignments of the ley lines is not a common hypothesis. The first significant ley line to be traced was determined from crossing through Stonehenge. To our ancient ancestors, the Earth's landscape was a canvas upon which humans connected the points on the ground with points in the sky, the sun, the moon, the stars, various constellations, and the change of seasons was critical to our species survival. Most megalithic constructions are connected in a straight line or triangular pattern. Now, St Michael's Ley Line runs in England, for example, from Great Yarmouth to Penzance on the south. The interesting fact about it is it follows a path of midsummer sunrise, and it connects Stonehenge, Glastonbury, and Avebury, which are all ancient megalith sites. So we have these St. Michael's connections all the way from one end of England to the other. And we also have, of course, the temples built on these ley lines. This is, of course, an artist rendering of the Solomon First Temple in Jerusalem on Temple Mount. And you can see, of course, the two big columns in the front and also on the side and inside. Now, spirit ways are the most mysterious theory of them all. In most cultures, there are beliefs that the soul takes a path after its biological term on earth, and we see the evidence in history when after a burial, the bodies are buried with valuable goods that they were required to have with them in their afterlife, and we see this, of course, very often, especially in Egypt. Now, the thing is concerning, for example, here, St. Michael's Monastery in the island of Simi, and that's the icon of St. Michael, the archangel, covered with a sterling silver covering. And we've seen a lot of miracles concerning prayers to St. Michael's here, for example. And one of the things that even I have done many a time is sent a message in a bottle, a prayer, a message to St. Michael to deliver immediately to the throne of God. And the messages are, in my case, they were usually heard for my own family and for some other people. We had a long list of prayers from little children that we put in the bottle, and my goodness, they were, thank goodness, fulfilled with the greatest expectations. Just amazing, and we glorify God for that. But how does that happen? We don't know. But again, we don't know how the ancients knew about these locations. They would have had to know if they had some kind of a knowledge of what was taking place above Earth from high up. Okay, so of course we know that the ancients had travel all along Mediterranean up to the Scandinavia through the British Isles and everything, trade as well as colonization. But how do they know about the ley lines when we draw the straight line from one location to the other? I believe, obviously, as some ancient texts tell us, they did have air travel and even space travel. They had a lot of high technology. I mean, we've only been around for 2,000 years, and look at the technology we have already. When you compare what it was like about 100 and 150 years ago, and what an ancient civilization would have had if it was around for 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 years, what they could have come up with. Anyway, this is concerning the ley lines of St. Michael, as you can see the map here, from England all the way through France, all the way through Italy, through Greece, the island of Simi, St. Michael, the icon that I just showed you, all the way to Mount Carmel in Israel. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. This was from Art of Travel, Arcadia Lines, and I'll leave a link below for you for this. Thank you.